Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 704.
From the sleepy suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio, there are assembled the world's two greatest podcast hosts, created from the cosmic legends of the universe. Sean Whalen.
Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast. I'm a big fan of variant colors. My love for Batman is that stuff. Let's talk some comics.
And Jim Segulin.
How's it going, eh? You know me and Superman. I'm really loving what they're doing. Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast.
Their mission, to discuss DC Comics in books, movies, and television several times a month in 1 to 3 hour episodes. And to serve all mankind.
Outstanding!
Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, on this episode, we're going to talk about Night Terrors Week 2. And basically, it's all the issues, Night Terrors 1, and everything else that came out this week. We are sponsored, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Mr. Segulin, what is going on over at DCB Service?
We have Flash, number 1, 50% off, $249. Birds of Prey, number 1, 50% off, $199. And Blue Beetle, number 1, 40% off, $239. Thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com, they have the Batman Arkham Catwoman trade paperback. $19.99, regularly 50% off, only $9.99. I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Mr. Segulin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of Week 2 of Night Terrors. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's talk some scary comics.
There they are, all alone except for that old character.
So, Jim, I figured this episode let's start talking about Night Terrors number 1 and really talk about the books that have been released in what is Week 2 of Night Terrors. This event's continued on, and I don't know where you've been at. It's not for the show, because one of the things I've really been kind of wiring myself with Night Terrors, it's like, if we start to drop off on this, I think that'd be kind of fun to discuss and like go on to then other books, because we've decided we want to wake up from Night Terrors, if that makes sense. But I'm not in that place at all. This is a very pleasant dream that I'm happy to continue riding along with. That's my experience, at least. Week 2, I jumped on these books. I was stoked to read them and just found myself really captivated by this. That's where I'm at, though. Where are you at with this storyline? Has Week 2 been as satisfying as Week 1 for you?
So what I'm hearing is you're saying you're enjoying their suffering. So
I am. Yeah. There's something wrong with me. I'll admit that I'm enjoying the suffering of other. Wait, I'm enjoying the suffering of heroes that I have followed for my whole life and have inspired me. There is something seriously wrong with that, but I'm all in on it. I'm captivated. Torture them more.
We're friends, because so am I.
Yeah, bring on the torture.
As long as it's not me, heck yeah, let's do this, man. No. I'm really digging this, and it's funny. I'm looking at it and reading it different than I have other events. And what I mean by that is, my first read through is I'm reading it just for the enjoyment of the story. Then when I do my second and third read throughs, I'm actually looking at trying to solve the mystery. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Especially with Dark Crisis, I kept, every time I'm like, I'm breaking, trying to figure this out. That with this one, I'm just sitting back enjoying the stories, and part of the thing I'm loving is figuring out, is this going to be part of the solution, or is this just a cool side story? And that's the thing, I don't know with this stuff, because with Week 1, I was like, okay, the Bat book's going to be a good one to really show, the story and all that and the solution. Now I'm like, I don't know anymore. There's some stuff going on in Zatanna. There was some stuff going on in Shazam, plus neat developments in the actual Night Terrors itself. I was like, I'm really digging the way they're doing this story. Again, it's one of those things where if you just read the main title, I'm sure you'll get the full picture.
Yep.
But when I'm reading all these other side stuff, man, I'm like, okay, now was this just a cool story, or did that mean something? Or did that mean something? And I love the breakdown. And again, the multiple read-throughs are really crucial for me on just, my enjoyment. It's going, and again, first read-through, I'm enjoying this. These are good, solid stories that I'm having fun with, that I'm like, yes, this is awesome. But then when you do that second read-through, that third read-through, when you start looking at everything, comparing it, that's when it really does kind of like kick it up to 11. And I was like, I'm really digging how this story, the overall event is flowing.
Yeah, and that's been something that's been really great with it. I feel like, so I guess to answer your question as far as where I'm at with the tie-ins, I think that's just what they are. I think they're reflective of the story. I think there is some expansive material in them, meaning that if you're reading Batman, I think you're getting some expansive story. I think Zatanna is giving you some expansive story. I think all of them in their own way are reflective of what's going on. In some cases, it's really cool in some cases where it's clearly a continuation of the current book that it's replacing in that moment, because it's the same creative team, if that makes sense. So I like that, like, Green Lantern jumped from what was happening in issue 2 to this, if it makes sense.
Yeah.
And kind of wove in. But I like that not every book has had to feel beholden to that. And I think there's something really cool when a event kind of takes advantage of that, if that makes sense. And the writers tell stories that make sense for their particular characters. Shazam is a great example of that, where there's a story going on there where I'm like, boy, Mark Waid is really going to some dark places with the Shazam family. And I really liked it. I thought it was, because I'm really enjoying the Shazam title. And I was glad that he embraced it and said, well, I got a story for you.
Let's talk some nightmares.
Yeah, exactly. You may not want to go and say that word after you read this book. And I thought that was really, really cool, the way that they did that. This main story, I love the use of Deadman in it. And he's a character who, I don't want to say I run hot and cold on. I always have liked Deadman. I think Deadman is a great character. He is fun to read. He's one of those characters that I forget I like until I'm reading him. And that's been throughout my entire life. I've always enjoyed Batman team-ups with him. Going back to the 70s, I've always enjoyed this character. He is one, in this story, I think the handling of him, I love the bit where he's in the red suit and he's kind of telling a little bit about his life story and how he plays into all this, because then we flip to the show must go on, because he's kind of brought us back in to set the stage, and we're in the cliffhanger we're left off where his Deadman is being choked out by insomnia, and we get to see the story continue on. I am becoming much more convinced, though, that what we saw, and we talked about last episode, about that cliffhanger with Batman showing up with Black Adam, I'm convinced that's Deadman.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's Deadman too. I'm pretty good with that. I think that is, because we're seeing him walking around in the bat suit, being the body, doing stuff as Batman, and I can see him, that actually being him. But again, until we get more detail, it's one of those things where the swerve could come. And I think that'll be kind of neat if it is the swerve. But I'm really digging just the usage of him in the Bat body, him doing, using the tools that Batman has, plus his own acrobatic stuff, mixed into it. And I'll be honest with you, I 100% did not see Wesley Dodd coming into it. 100% was completely like, oh, that is awesome.
But it makes sense, doesn't it?
100%. That was a perfect usage of it, and I love the fact that Bat still has some of that Lazarus resin around, so he can raise the zombie. Wesley raise the zombie Sandman.
I love Wesley Dodds too. He's a great character, and I didn't know that. I'm hoping out of this we somehow get him back, and I don't. And if we get him back as zombie Wesley Dodds, that's fine too. I just. Whether or not the Lazarus resin will keep him back permanently or not, I don't know. But man, I was geeking. I was cheering. I did not see it coming either, and I like when they do stuff like that. And they tease it earlier on. You know, when they're talking about the Nightmare Stone, and you see the picture of him in there, and I'm like, okay. But I totally was swerved. No, not swerved as much as surprised, I should say, by that piece. But I love that Dead Man went and pursued this. It's like, who is the person that I can bring in? And I thought that was really, really awesome.
Oh, big time. And I one of the things I'm really digging throughout this are the different heroes that didn't fall asleep for one reason or another. Mostly because, you know, we got Robot Man and Red Tornado, who are robots.
Yeah.
So they're not able to fall asleep. You've got Zatanna, who is just Zatanna, and she was able to protect herself. So I'm curious to see in Black Adam also was able to protect himself because of the magic. So curious to see how that plays out.
Yeah. It's one of the cool things about this story is that you've got these surprising characters who are able to outlast it. That I thought was something that was really interesting. Can we talk a little bit about the Shazam piece that was going on?
Yes.
Because it's funny. The story. One of the things that I really dug is, again, you're dealing with magic-based characters who are trying to basically counter this world. So you've got Mary, and you've got Black Adam, and you've got Billy. I mean, obviously these are not all. This is Mary dealing with kind of nightmare versions of these characters, and because she did fall asleep, but she's dealing with the fact that that magic that they've got is something. And it's something that's not really explored that often, because I do think about, like, would I want the power of Shazam? Well, as a kid in the 70s, I did. Watching that TV show, like Shazam, and you turn from, like, a kid into this super powerful Captain Marvel. And you can go out there and just, do all this really cool stuff and then lecture kids about the things they're doing wrong. I loved that character. So then, you enter this, though, and he's shown, like, some terrorizing sides of it. She goes to say it, and Black Adam's like, that's my word, not yours. You want to say it to save everyone, but I'm the only one who really knows how to use it. Let me show you. And he pulls Freddy out and fries him with it. I was like, whoa, did the same thing to Billy. And
Darla.
Yes. And then the cliffhanger is, all the kids, he does it with all the kids, then walks up to her, stands by her, and the cliffhanger is he whispers it in her ear. I'm like, oh my gosh, what a great story. I mean, it had me, I was like, oh, this is chilling. I loved her dreams because I was following her whole dreams and kind of seeing her day-to-day, her week. Because that was a great example of a great build, right? They showed the relationship of her with her family, but then showed that really being messed with. That was something that was super cool, that it led to the end where that whole sequence happened, and I loved it.
And one of the things that, again, I'm agreeing everything you said. I loved how that played out. But I started thinking, could this be part of the solution? Could this be part of the end game?
Yeah.
And we know Insomnia's end game is to find the Nightmare Stone. Part of me is wondering if this is all used to trick Mary into using wisdom to find the stone for Insomnia. Or is this a trick on Insomnia to try to get the power, that Mary has to use the wisdom to find the stone?
I think he's trying to manipulate every single person he encounters to find the stone, because he doesn't know where it is and who will be the key to opening it. So I don't know that Mary's wisdom is necessarily the gateway to the stone, but I think you're right that he's trying to do exactly what you're saying. Am I making any sense?
Yeah.
I think he's trying anything and throwing it to see what sticks. And I mean, it's a brilliant tactic. It's like, why head one way when you can head all of them? And that's the part I think that's actually, it's an interesting strategy that he's using, and I think it's actually working.
Interesting strategery.
Yeah, and as again, proving that it's evil. Yes, I agree.
It's evil.
What'd you think about the Hal Jordan issue?
I really dig that. And to me, when I was reading that, it seemed, again, that was one where I was initially thinking, okay, this is just going to be a cool story.
Yeah.
And then it gets, again, you get to that point where you're like, is it really? Does Hal have the willpower to fight this.
Yeah.
Is Hal going to be a player in the game just because of his willpower? Because even in the middle of that issue, he's able to fight through the nightmare realm.
Yeah.
He's able to realize, hey, this is not real, and creates his own Centurions to take out the nightmare images, and he's, doing his thing, and it ends with Parallax coming at him, and there's no back down. He's going head-to-head with Parallax, and this time Hal's going to kick its butt, because that's one of his big fears, his big failures. He's not afraid of that. So that was a really cool thing, and that was something that after reading it, I was like, I wonder, just like the backup story with Sinestro, because
before we go to that, can we talk a little bit more about Hal?
Yeah,
because I loved how you're talking about failures, multiple like landmark failure points in his life. What happened with his dad? It's his dad's death, and Carol, the constant struggle with Carol to kind of build that relationship, try to get noticed by her. And step up, really, every time she shuts the door with him stepping in as a test pilot to try and win her over. Abin Sur, and what happened there. Boy, talk about a terrorizing thing. So you get this powerful ring on your finger, and in this case, it's doing the opposite. It's not using your willpower. It is sucking out your willpower and sucking it into Abin Sur, who then is taking him down. I mean, he got his finger chopped off, in order to resolve the issue. I mean, that was crazy. The stuff with the Guardians, just some brilliant writing because, again, now he has been removed from the Corps. They're doing the vicious turn as well. I just thought it really was just a super all-encompassing look of, like, if you haven't read Green Lantern before, you can hand someone this issue and kind of go, this is kind of an overview of who Hal Jordan is and where he's been from. Interesting guy. You may want to read more of the book.
Yeah. Something I noticed on this one, and I didn't realize this, but at the funeral, Hal's Jewish. I did not realize that. Because he's had the yarmulke on, and there was a couple of the symbols there, and I was like, when did Hal Jordan become Jewish? I never knew that.
I didn't know a lot about his religious background either. I don't know.
And that's something I was just wondering if that was always the case, and I just didn't realize it, or are they introducing it here, or I don't know. And that was something I was like, that's kind of cool that they're bringing that in.
No, it's been there before. So he was raised in a dual faith household of a Jewish mother and a Catholic father.
Okay.
So it would meet the fact that the mother was Jewish.
Yes.
I didn't know. Truthfully, I'll admit I've read a lot of Green Lantern. I've never really focused on that part of it. I'm glad you brought that up. That's an interesting point.
Yeah, and again, another neat thing was I loved how Hal, when you talk about him cutting off his finger to save himself, it was the yellow metal that he had to use to cut the finger off.
Yes, yeah. That was cool.
Again, just
good
really
attention to detail.
Yeah,
that was neat. Sinestro, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off with that. I just wanted to. There was so much with going on with Hal that I thought was way cool. Sinestro, I liked actually the pairing of Hal and Sinestro and like mirror stories here. So I think you're right to go to the whole Sinestro piece because also while these two have been like, to some extent, you could consider them kind of opposites of each other. There's an interesting parallel in seeing the two of them deal with this in very, very different nightmares actually. Where Sinestro, it's more of the amount of fear that's being brought on him. Like his nightmare is being overcome by fear, right?
Yes.
Which was interesting.
And again, it's kind of neat seeing Sinestro this way.
Yeah.
Seeing the broken man, because he's never been broken. Even when he's lost his ring, even when he's been, depowered. And I did air quotes around the word depowered because Sinestro was never depowered. He just, is in a weaker state than he was. This we're seeing a depowered Sinestro. We're seeing someone who doesn't have his swagger. And Hal and Sinestro, again, one of the things I was wondering, because again, when I read it, you read a first read for a good story. Second read is this going to be part of the solution? And those two working together,
Oh, yeah.
I think you're going to be part of the solution, because you have the two strongest wills to ever wield a ring. Those are the two who, they've been called, both been called the greatest Green Lantern ever, because of the strength of their willpower. And I see those two, and I don't know how it's going to happen, but there's going to be emerging where those two are going to work together and they're going to do a tag team. And that's going to be part of either the bridge to wake people up, the bridge to take down the bad guy, or something. And I'm not sure. Because think about it, Nightmare, Fear, that's Sinestro's realm, willpower, Hal, but they're both willpower. Somehow we're going to get those two working together, I think.
I think what you're going to see here is various heroes and villains overcoming this and mounting the final offensive on Insomnia. And I think it's going to look very different for different characters. So I think that is part of the journey. At least I'm with you. I'm seeing these two both breaking out of it, whether doing it together or independently. I think we're going to see two characters. I think you're onto something. I think we're going to see the two characters very much working together and coming out of it. So The Flash was a very, very interesting story because you're dealing with Barry. I think because of the focus right now on Wally and his book, I was actually glad to see Barry was the one that went under, just because I missed Barry. Yeah. So it was nice to see a really good Barry story where it's not that Wally's not there. We're dealing with a situation where Wally's been taken down. This is a Nightmare of Barry's where Wally's been taken down. Jay couldn't help him because Jay was hurt. It actually plays off of some classic comic book stories that, Barry's kind of living through this nightmare. And you see that this is a Wally he can't rescue because of how Wally was injured with the spear. There's not a way for Barry to help him. And Barry is doing everything he can to overcome. Feels powerless to the point when he's being taunted by Grodd, he loses it, which was something that I thought was, it's not common to see with Barry. Barry's usually got it pretty together. But this is a Barry who he's fighting with the fact, like he was looking for Linda, but yet Linda wouldn't be there because this is Kid Flash. So this is a Barry who's aware of the present day subconsciously, but not at the same time. And that frustration has to be mounting as well. I love that there's multiple layers to why Barry would be frustrated in this story, and he's not necessarily aware of all of them. And I thought that part was really, really cool.
And he was asking with the prison warden, he was asking for the other prison warden, not the one he was there. And just, again, his tying into the Speed Force, where it doesn't completely, it's not completely working for him. Well, one, there is Hal, who is massively messed up from the last night, or final night. But there's still just that Speed Force is hurting Barry, as opposed to him working with it. And again, part of me is thinking, okay, that's just part of the whole nightmare thing and all that. But part of me is wondering if the Speed Force is going to play a part in the hiding of the stone. I wonder if the Nightmare Stone, if you need to pass through the Speed Force to get to something like that. So again, this is all manipulation by Insomnia to open the path to the Speed Force. And you'll travel through the Speed Force to get to such and such, maybe to get to the Rock of Eternity and have Mary Marvel do the Shazam to open up the gateway and stuff like that. That's where I'm wondering if all this stuff is going to play out like that. And this is the Barry's run into the Speed Force, where he thinks he's going to save Kid Flash, is really providing Insomnia the path to get to the stone.
I think for most of these heroes, this is my take on it. And so maybe to what you're saying, so let's leave that as one option. My option on this is I think Insomnia is doing everything he can to keep them mentally preoccupied so he can search. I don't think that the Speed Force, at least what we're seeing with the Speed Force right now, has anything to do with other than Barry doing everything in his power set to try and overcome this. We got a Barry dealing with the guilt of when he's not been there. and due to various life circumstances where he's missed so much, when he was taken off the table due to Crisis on Infinite Earths, history of being late, which is crazy for the Flash, right? But that's something that's a known quantity with Barry, because he sees what happens with Hal. Hey, I wasn't there. Hal wasn't there for Final Night. So Barry's dealing with a Hal who, got horribly burned and disfigured, which did not happen in Final Night, but we're doing a different sort of take on what happened there. And I love that aspect of this story. The monster that he's talking about there, Wally's monster, I can see how that could be what you're talking about. The other piece is that something that's further going to add terror? Is Barry going to be Wally's monster? Is somehow Barry going to be that thing? Part of me is wondering if there's some tie to Barry being in there, and Barry being some catalyst to what's going on in Barry's nightmare. It's going to be interesting to see. I don't know. I don't 100% know what's going on there, but I love that I find this story intriguing. I'm not really oppositional to what you're saying. I'm not where you're at as far as seeing these as connected puzzle pieces as far as some greater plan of his. Other than where I see them being connected is he's keeping them off the table for a reason. And he wants them all off the table so he can search freely. Because if he's got them locked up in nightmares, he can root around their subconscious and try to see which one of you are holding it.
And I'll be honest with you, I completely am cool with that. Mm-hmm. Because, again, as I said, when I first read it, the first read-through is exactly that mindset. 100%. I'm looking at that, and that's 100% where I'm thinking we're going to, that's what the purpose of the tie-ins. It's when I start doing my second and third read-throughs that I start looking for stuff, and it's just it's the Ralph Digby,
Yeah.
My nose is twitching because I've got a mystery going on here. I've got to solve it.
I love that though. That's why I said I'm not disputing you, because you put a lot of thought into your pathway, and I haven't. Who knows? So, sometimes you and I have these discussions, and I go back through and start reading things, and I take pieces of what you've said, and they process, and like, oh, maybe it is more of what Jim's saying, or I make some hybrid, which we all do, right? When you start hearing commentary on things, I love that you're having that experience with this, because I'm finding the more that the story goes on, the more I'm trying to figure it out. And last episode, remember, I was a lot more on the mindset of, I don't know that I'm really worried about any of that. I'm just kind of going along on the ride. No, now I'm starting to want to know. I'm starting to want to figure it out. I'm starting to look for clues as to what's going on here. And that's growing. And I like that can be a very different experience for different readers. That part's fun. Yeah.
And again, it was like in the main book, in Nightmare Terrors 1, we got a couple more pieces of who Insomnia is.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like that they gave us a taste of it. And again, brilliant idea by Deadman. Jump out of the bat, jump into the bad guy. And try to, and root around there. Try to get some intel on who you're up against. And again, that Lazarus Ring, he was an inmate at Arkham. So right there it says something. Add the Lazarus Ring to it. That kicked it up to another notch. And I loved how, again, we still don't know who he is exactly, but we're starting to get the pieces of the puzzle. And again, it's little reveals here. And I loved the ending bit when Deadman was in him.
Yeah.
When the hidden stuff wasn't a nightmare, but was something happy. Was a happy memory of some family, some loved one. And then as soon as Deadman starts to kind of weed around that, Insomnia is able to kick him out. That for me was a great, because again, it opens the question, who is he thinking about? Who is that, family?
His. It's got to be his.
Well, it's got to be his, but again, who? I'm like, come on.
I don't know that they're necessarily anybody that are known. There's some reason why he looks at the heroes as monsters.
Right.
Why? What happened to his family that he perceives the heroes being the ones that did it?
Yeah.
Or the heroes at least being the catalyst of it. I don't know. And maybe that does go back to Dark Crisis. I don't know, because you mentioned that being a possibility.
That was the first thing that did pop in my head. Mm-hmm. And it still is. You think about it, the aftermath of Dark Crisis. again, Dark Crisis killing a bunch of people or doing something to people. Then after that, you've got the Lazarus planet with the Lazarus rain, mutating him, all this stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that in the recent big events has happened that I still think those are the catalysts on creating Insomnia.
How cool is the Robin issue?
Dude, I was absolutely stoked for this one because, again, we've got two great Robins who I think need more screen time.
Yeah.
Because, Damien's got plenty of time, and Damien's awesome. And Dick Grayson, hey, he's wonderful. I'm happy. I'm really glad we're getting some great Nightwing stories. But Tim and Jason are the two Robins that have gotten the shaft lately. And I'm glad they're the focus of this. And I'm glad, again, another one of those, for me, when I was looking at this in multiple read-throughs, again, this to me seems like just a really cool story. I don't see the connection. I didn't really see a puzzle piece to tie this into, the end game. The heroes being saved. But again, it's still a great issue. It's still a great story. And
I don't see. That's why I don't think this is
a bit for it.
I don't think these are about necessarily the heroes being saved. I think it's about keeping them off the table. And everyone needs a different catalyst because the idea is to bring them further into the nightmares, not for them to stay with the same treadmill, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you see as they start to kind of collaborate and try to get out, they go further in. They're hit with more. They're hit deeper. They're hit with the more personal ones. Jason and Tim being together and the two of them kind of in their own ways, kind of feeding each other. I think their story is going to be a lot more like the Sinestro and Hal one, maybe even more so than of what you were thinking. Where are these two somehow going to help each other overcome their own nightmares? Where they're going to come out of it because of the fact that they work together, and in that working together, we're able to overcome. And I don't know. That's kind of where my head's at with it.
I 100% think that's going to happen because you look at what was going on with Tim. He's trying to save his father. Again, to me, that whole sequence
52 times, right? Wasn't there something like that?
52 times, and he failed every time.
Yeah.
And again, his father dying, those final moments and identity crisis still tear me up. When I read it, when I talk about it. So the fact that was the story here, I'm like, oh man, this is awesome. And I loved how it just kept his failures over and over. And then the Bat family shows up and he's like, yay! And no, they turn on him and then they die. And it just he starts spiraling out of control to that kid balled up in the fetal position, crying, unable to do anything.
Yeah.
And then he hears Jason needing help. And that pulls him out. And I was like, yes, right there, the Bat family. I loved seeing that happen. That was something I was really enjoyed. And then you flip the page and you see where Jason's in trouble, and you're like, oh yeah, Jason needs some help there.
Well, the worst part is, Dick Grayson was so used. I mean, not Dick Grayson. I'm sorry, Tim Drake was so used to, his father being killed, and feeling like he let others down and wasn't enough to save them. He saw in Batman, he saw Nightwing, he saw Batgirl, he saw Stephanie, all taken down by Captain Boomerang. And it really broke him down bad because he was hit over and over again with it. And he and Jason talking to each other now is starting to wake both of them up because they both kind of painted themselves into this overwhelming corner, right? Jason's is a little bit different than Tim's. But they both are facing this overwhelming odds. I mean, Tim was completely broken down until when he shouted out that finally Jason was able to reach back and talk to him. So I love that there's like a psychology of these two somehow being able to help each other out. Two brothers like standing together in a situation. I wonder if they're going to tag each other in or something's going to happen here where these two are going to get each other out, and I can't wait to see it. I really loved the layout of this story. Yeah. It had elements of what you and I both liked about the Green Lantern story, But the interplay of the parallels between the two, that was on Tim one moment, then it was back on Jason, then back on Tim, then back on Jason, and each one was being taken down further to the point where you get to see them in the end just completely almost broken. But if it wasn't for the other, they would not be able to be as coherent as we're seeing at the end. I dug that something fierce.
Oh, big time. Big time, yeah. Powerful storytelling. And again, I'm really digging that one.
So, what do you think about the Rustbringer?
Rustbringer. Dude, you know what? That Zatanna story was outstanding. Oh my God, did I love that one. And again, she's another one of those heroes who didn't fall asleep because of the magic. But she's up against villains from the Nightmare realm.
Yep.
So these aren't Insomnia's people. These are other villains who are just trying to take advantage of the situation because they're bad people. And that was something I thought was kind of neat. Again, evil does as evil does, so they're going to do this. And with her and the magic stuff, it's it could very easily be whimsical. Because of the backwards speaking and this and that, what's she going to say to make stuff? But you do see the power that's there. You do see the power levels that Zatanna has. And this was a really cool flexing stuff. And the fact that she pulls in Robot Man as her champion, because he's awake because he's a robot. But, Cliff is Cliff, and it's, the last person she probably really wanted around, but he absolutely was one of the best pieces to be used in this situation. That for me was a really cool, just again, usage of what you have, who you have, but then improvise, adapt, overcome. And again, it's Doom Patrol. Just when you think they're dead, they come back. So having him as your backup was actually a pretty cool usage of the character. Yeah.
And that worked out really well. I liked how her relationship with Robot Man changed throughout the story, too. And there's reasons why. She's like, she went back, and her history with the Doom Patrol's not great. But, and that was reflecting on, I hate these guys. But as they went on, the two of them both earned an appreciation for each other that I thought was just really great. The artwork was fantastic. I really I'm with you. This story was a standout. And not one that was on my radar in the beginning. I mean, I love Zatanna. I like the character, so I was in on it because of that. I did not think this one was going to be as pivotal. Doesn't this one feel like this is a big story? She's got a big role in this?
I think so. Just the fact that we're dealing with a hero who's awake.
Yeah.
Dealing with other villains who are awake. And just everything that's going on. Just even though the power isn't magical, she's still going to be somebody that can do some good. But it's also interesting because this is somebody that Insomnia is not directly affecting. So that's where I think she's going to play into the main storyline by being the fact she's one of the woken heroes. And I'm dying to see how she can fix and heal Robot Man and bring him back from Rusty.
Yeah, there's a relationship that I think that's been developed there that I hope plays into it, because I really liked how those two played off each other. I thought it was just a great pairing. So, anything else you want to say about week 2?
Dude, I want week 3.
Yeah.
Well, we have week 3. I'm going to read it now.
Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of the nice thing about this is I've been feeling the same way. We didn't organically plan to kind of cover each week or in the way that we are. And my intention is we're going to keep doing this as long as we're enjoying it. I think that it's kind of like any journey is, if this thing keeps motivating us to have these conversations, I think that's kind of a telling way to go on it. And if for some reason we fall out, I think we'll have a discussion as far as why. But so far, it's been ramping up and keeping me pulled in, which is important with an event because they're setting aside a number of titles for July and August to pull off this event. So when you're going to do that, you've got to give something that keeps you satisfied with your favorite books. And this so far is doing it. Like 2 weeks in, it's doing it for me. So it's
2 weeks in, I'm looking forward to week 3.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, again, with events sometimes, even we get burned out on events as well.
Sure.
And when this was first coming out, I was thinking, okay, it's going to be a neat little summer break, and then as the story's going on, I'm like, this is more than a summer break. This is more than just, there's going to be ramifications.
Yeah.
In the universe. Part of me is wondering if the Flash, we're starting off at Flash 1 and it's going to be Wally centric. Part of me is wondering if because of these events is why Barry goes, I need to step away for a little while. And that's why Barry's not the Flash.
I don't know.
And we're already seeing stuff going on with the Shazam family, with Mary and Billy, and who has the power and whatnot, and the others don't. Part of me is wondering, when this all plays out, we're going to have maybe one champion of Shazam out of this. And I'm not betting on Billy for that. I'm betting on Mary, will continue the power.
Oh, I disagree. I think it's going to be Billy.
You disagree? You think it's going to be Billy?
Well, I don't know that we're going to... If we wind up with one, I think it's going to be Billy. I'm still thinking we're going to have Billy and Mary. But if there's only going to be one, I think it's going to be Billy.
In some reason in my head, I've got this. There can be only one going through my head.
I'm in reading the Mark Waid and Dan Mora book right now. I don't see that switching to Mary.
And yeah, I agree, and that's why I'm saying Mary. A swerve. I'm not seeing the swerve at all. I'm not necessarily seeing I get that you're saying there could be only one, and that's where your head's at. I'm not necessarily feeling that way, but if you're asking me, if you think there would be only one, who do you think it would be right now? I would say it would be Billy. Okay. And here's the thing. I'm not saying that's going to 100% happen, but when I start thinking off page on what can happen, what can go, where is this going to lead? These are the kind of stuff that I'm just thinking, what about this? What about this? Like with the Hal Jordan stuff, I see more of a Hal being a team player when this is all said and done.
I see Shazam when this is all said and done, eventually. And I don't think it's necessarily going to be from this story, but I see Shazam being Billy, Mary, and Freddy.
That'd be nice. I 100% would be cool with that. I'd love that. Because, again, I really do. Again, yes, give me that. That'd be perfect.
That's where I think Shazam's going. Again, this is speculation. So
right.
You could be right. There could be only one, and it's Mary, and I'm swerved. Okay, then I'm swerved. I'm not. I like Mary, so you're not going to hurt me if that ends up happening. Right now, I think that Billy is pretty pivotal with what Mark Waid is doing. I can speak. Welcome to Podcasting 101.
Yes.
I invented 3 different words there. But I think that Billy has been the focus that he's been for a reason. But there's been some story beats that makes me think that Billy won't necessarily be, or at least there'll be an attempt for Billy not to be the lone Shazam. Whether or not it'll be the case, I don't know. But and again,
they did a great job with Mary having other gods as her sponsors. Her gods aren't the same ones. She doesn't have the wisdom of Solomon. I can't remember whose hers is. I think she has the wisdom of Hippolyta, right?
Who?
Mary. Her gods are different than Billy's gods.
Oh, because of what they did with her storyline you're talking about.
Right, yeah.
How it changed in that. Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I get what you're saying. Yeah, originally they were Billy's gods. But you're talking about the Mary storyline where that kind of changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, I could be, I'll be honest with you, with this one, I'm probably 100% wrong on it, but there is just something, that feeling I was getting while reading that. And I think that is the neat thing about this story, that I'm going from, before we read a single page, I was like, oh, summer break, summer fun. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Nothing too major. It's kind of like that Convergence story that, initially everyone said, it's just a summer break, nothing too neat, nothing too important out of it. And we get the original Clark back. We get Lois, we get a kid out of it. We get all these, event changing situations happen because of that Convergence story. I see this being that same kind of thing where we're going to get some changes in the heroes universe.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what some clarification as far as what Mary's deal is now, because originally it was from the same gods that Billy was. So it'd be Solomon, Hercules, right. Atlas, Zeus, Achilles, and Mercury. I know that we've had different storytelling. Is that still in play now? I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what's her story right now. I'm intrigued. There's more Mary storytelling to be had, so I do hope we continue to get more Mary spinning out of this.
There's something about Mary.
Nothing like the handy-dandy electro-claw for carving through metal doors.
So one of the things that's happening right now is Blue Beetle's pausing promotion in support of the SAG AFTRA strike. This is where I get worried, and I was a union guy when I was a teacher, and I'm very pro-union. I'm actually, I've got to admit I'm not following every tiny detail of this, but there's certainly something for them to have serious conversations around. When you hear things about AI being used, where somebody can go and do one day's work, get paid for it, and then their AI likeness can be used for seemingly in a significant amount of time beyond that without them getting paid, that's problematic. And I could see them wanting to fight for things like that. There's crazy things popping up about residuals, and it's not all the same. One of the things we all think about is, oh, geez, actors make so much money, right? Well, yes, if you're in huge Hollywood blockbusters. But there's also, people that, aren't the main lead. There are people that are supporting cast and are, extras and things like that who they're trying to make a living in Hollywood doing all of this. And they're part of, the same group. Writers, the same thing. So that part I'm all for. This promotion part is where there's an issue I have. And the issue I have is, it's like, first of all, solve this doggone thing. Sit down and have your conversations and get to the root of what's fair. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, I'm not going to pretend I understand all that. But clearly a conversation needs to be had, and multiple conversations. There needs to be one, involving the writers, involving the actors. Let's make this right and get going forward. But it seems to me that there's not a whole lot of forward movement going on any of that. There's a lot of posturing and no forward movement, which isn't good for stuff like this. And this is not just me as the DC fan saying this. My problem when I see something like this is, this looks like a pretty darn stellar movie. I hope it is. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm hoping it's as stellar as it looks. If this film, doggone it, flops, and it's a great movie, by the way, let's be clear on that. I am going to be really, really ticked. And the main reason why is there's money that deserves to be made by people for a great movie, right? And that's part of what they're trying to negotiate. So I hope this doesn't bomb because of nonsense, And I say that with respect to people who are fighting for things that they genuinely deserve. I want you to get them. What I also want, though, is when a piece of artwork has been created, I want that artwork to be viewed. I want it to be enjoyed, and I want it to make money. And I want it to make money for the right people. I want it to make money for the company, and I want to make money for everybody who's involved in creation, and I want people to be treated fairly. And I don't want it to be a dud. I'd almost rather, if that's the problem right now, that we got to pause promotion on it, then doggone it, delay the movie. And maybe you might think I'm wrong on that piece, but I feel like if you are not going to be able to properly support the movie because it's going on, then at what point? And that's not a good thing for the movie theaters. Well, nobody's winning. Nobody's winning on this.
We saw with The Flash what can happen when you pause actually the release of the film.
Yes.
That hurt. That's one of the things that hurt The Flash was the fact that it had been put on hold so long. And then the fact that the universe is in the process of being rebooted, and all of that stuff that's happening. That's one of the things that did hurt The Flash, unfortunately. And I'm worried something like that's going to hurt Blue Beetle as well. Because The Flash is at least a name that non-comic book people know about.
Right.
Blue Beetle is a name that only comic book fans know about.
Yeah.
So if we're not getting a lot of advertisement for it, and there's been promotion for it. I know there's a lot of people, who are out there saying, they haven't started the promotion, and I'm like, I've seen advertisements during a wrestling show, And I'll tell you, AEW is a great crowd for these Blue Beetle promotions. The similar type of energy that you would get from the wrestling crowd you would get in this movie. So I think that's a smart play on their part. So I think they have done some stuff, but if they're not going to go full court press, do we push it back?
Well, and it's the start. And wait, hold on. Let's be clear about this. I understand that. Let me be clear, because I want to totally represent what's being said here. The star who's playing Blue Beetle is saying that in order to support this, I've got to pause promoting this movie.
Right.
I get that. And I don't think there's anything he can do about that. It doesn't mean, though, that the studio can't continue to promote it.
They should, yeah.
So, I mean, that's a piece there's got to be some clarity off of that piece. And they better still promote this movie. I get why he's doing it. He's showing solidarity and support, and I get that and can support that piece. Reading it further, what's being said here is that the lead actor has to, because the tag says Blue Beetle will pause promotion, but it's got it in quotes. What they mean is the actual Blue Beetle actor, the Blue Beetle, cannot support it. And I get it, and there's actually a point to that. I feel like the studio should promote. Here's where I'm concerned with promotion and why I'm really worried right now. My movie theater, my local, has been getting, at least the last few times I've gone, more of an audience. I think the summer movies are starting to kick into gear. People are starting to go back to the theaters. This strike is not good for anybody. Movie theaters in particular cannot afford to take a hit right now. Get it together. And I'm not saying this, I get what he's doing. I actually support that piece. But you got to promote these movies. You've got to get more movies out. You've got to have more quality there. Settle this. Whatever you got to do to settle this, find a happy medium. And that's truly when you settle a situation, that's what you got to do. You got to give a little bit of A, a little bit of B. Make sure, find some balance and give the talent what they're looking for, as close as what you can to what they're looking for, while being reasonable to the fact that your companies, you have to make business. There is a happy medium to these things in negotiating. So find a doggone way to do that and get back in business, because this is silly.
And it's funny because I completely agree with what he's doing. He's got to do it, and I got his back on that.
I do too.
And when you look at depending on where your information's coming from, is who gets villainified by this. If you're getting your information based on what the actors and writers are saying, it's the studio execs. If you're going with the studio execs and looking at them, then it's the actors and the writers. Because the executives are saying, "Hey, we've made offers to them. They're not meeting with us." The actors are coming back saying, "Hey, the offers they're making is absolute garbage. They're not offering us anything. They're lying to you." So it's, who do you get the information from? Now, is it column A or column B? No, it's probably a little bit of both. Each side has to make some compromises. It's the old saying is, you don't make peace with your friends. You make peace with your enemies. And right now we've got two opposite sides who, if they don't start making peace, they both lose. Because if there's no movies, no TVs, nothing being made, both sides of the equation
Wait a minute.
nothing.
Wait a minute. You're saying no TVs are being made. That's an excellent segue to the next little meme that's right above this, where we've got a man with a TV on his head heading to front porches and providing people with old TVs. I
absolutely love this. I don't know why, but I think this is absolutely wonderful.
Do you love that he's doing this, or do you just love this and you're not sure why?
I love that I have no idea what the heck this guy is thinking. Yeah. And I'm assuming this is a guy, because I don't think a female would be this weird and insane. I think I have more confidence that this is coming from the twistedness of a man's mind, I think.
Yeah. Invincible Season 2 Comic-Con panel is still happening despite Hollywood strikes. I'm glad to see. I'm hoping that they find a way to balance out, because that's, again, another concern is, so these conventions are going on. And they rely heavily these days, whether you like it or not, on celebrity involvement and Hollywood involvement. So I'm hoping that they continue to find ways to navigate these, where they can continue striking, continue having their negotiations and things like that, but can continue supporting those conventions, because we can't have other industries taking the hit because of this. I know it puts pressure and things like that, but right now, who can afford to take a hit? But have you been watching Invincible at all? Have you watched the cartoon?
I haven't had a chance to. No.
It's on Amazon Prime. It's outstanding. It's really, really a great cartoon. So, season 2, welcome. You're a big fan of the comic, right?
Yes, I've read the comic. I love the comics. So,
it's as true to the comic as you can get. I mean, it's really it's a way to do it. I mean, and it's outstanding. Ms. Marvel takes a super leap from Disney Plus to ABC as the first MCU show on network TV. So that show's going to be airing on network TV. That was a good one. Did you see Ms. Marvel? Do you have Disney Plus?
Okay, I have Disney Plus. I have not seen any of the Marvel stuff.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that the reason I never watched this one is because I never watched the other ones, and I'm not going to see the movie because to me it feels like I've got to see everything to understand the story.
Wow. So it's kind of a complete, like the comic book completionist thing.
Right. So I'm at the point where I'm like, I need to see all of this, or I'm going to see none of it. So I said, no.
Wow. I wonder how many people are falling into that. I wonder, and I'm not knocking you for that. I will admit that I have seen movies when I haven't completely watched all of the TV lately, just because I like to see the movies in the theater. So I've jumped ahead. And then I've gone back and watched all the TVs, though. I've seen everything that all the Marvel TV. So I get what you're saying. It's interesting. I wonder how much of an impact that's having, and I'm wondering if that's why maybe they're trying to pare back a little bit and spread things out. I don't know. So there's a nice article about when does James Gunn's new DC canon begin, and obviously, it begins at the new Superman movie, right? Yeah, Superman Legacy. That's going to be the kickoff of all of this. I haven't read the whole article, so I'm not going to try to paraphrase something that I haven't fully read, but I think it's a good article to seek out, and just to talk about it in general. I'm worried about James Gunn's relaunch just because of how movies are tanking with a casual audience. Like, we know a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff. How many people really know about the nonsense involving the actor who played the Flash that don't care about, they aren't like us. You know what I mean? Right. Are there a lot of people that that are talking about what the actor who played the Flash, his kind of the troubles he got into? Is that a thing? We know, but
I'll tell you, outside of, because again, when I've got the work people who are comic book genre fans, so they see the comic book movies, but they don't read the comics. With him, they didn't. That wasn't anything that was brought up with me. No one asked me about that, and if they did, I don't know everything that he went through and what happened and all that side story. I just kind of kept out of that. I didn't feel like going down that rabbit hole, but I think that was more of a defensive measure that they took. Now, sure. With the Aquaman and with Amber Heard, everybody knows about her. Everybody, and I've had actually people ask me, "Hey, is she going to be in that Aquaman movie?" I'm like, I think not even 10 seconds worth. I think they cut her out. Like, oh dang, And that was basically the whole extent of that conversation. So it's, I don't know if these outside troubles affect anybody other than those of us who get heavy into the gossip, heavy into the story, heavy into, what is going on here. And so with this, I think the Superman Legacy coming out, the non-comic book fan, I think they'll just take this as another Superman movie. They're not going to look at this as, this isn't Henry Cavill. This isn't the other guy. This isn't the TV show guy. I don't think they're going to care about that kind of stuff because they're so used to the DC universe not having the same build that the Marvel universe has.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope. I'm just where I was going with that more so is a lot of times we do the DC Marvel thing, when it comes to like people are insanely loyal to the MCU, which is true. But with the casual crowd, there have been DC movies that have done very well. I don't know what it is that's keeping them from like a movie like The Flash. Like, what is doing it? How is that not being? I don't get it. I'm just really, really becoming baffled as far as why that happens. Anyway, just as a weird little segue. So in Is It Jaws number 178, Paul and I talked when we were joined by his nephew Brett, actually, and had a great conversation about The Flash. And it's a true review. So, Jim and I aren't really a review show. If you listen to us historically, we tried weekly, very weekly, to implement a review system very early on in the podcast. And that fizzled quickly because it was very forced. There wasn't a whole lot of motivation behind it. And as in Jaws, there's a review system, and basically it's Jaws 1 through Jaws 4, so Jaws 1 being an amazing movie that you want to see, over and over again, like this is top of the tier, top of the stack. Jaws 2 being a really, really good movie that, again, you could perhaps want to watch over and over again. But as you get into Jaws 3 and Jaws 4, you start to have problems. And there's even for, remember the Jaws that's in Back to the Future? Paul had mentioned that's kind of your one for the movie that's so bad it's good. It's a good rating system as far as for evaluating. You and I had a really in-depth, spoiler-filled conversation on the show about it. This was a different conversation where we're really doing it as a true review. And I deliberately tried to talk about this in a very different light with the intention of reviewing it. But really, if you get a chance and you're a fan of it, listen to Is It Jaws number 178. Shameless plug, but it's I thought we had a great conversation around it, and it felt very fresh to me compared to our conversation we had here. And Teen Titans Tokyo in Trouble. Did you ever see this?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, great, isn't it?
Oh, God, I loved it.
So this is airing on the Cartoon Network on July 21st to celebrate Teen Titans' 20th anniversary. How did that happen?
Boy.
And I love that Teen Titans series was really, really good. So I'm glad that they're doing it, and glad that Jock promoted it because it looks really, really cool. And it says in there it's worth your time if you've never seen it. I think it's worth your time if you have.
Even if you have seen it. Yeah,
I haven't watched it in a long time. That actually has me jonesing to watch it again.
Yeah, no, I gotta make a note to watch this.
Superman versus Meshi is great, Jock said, but Japan, Superman grew up in America. No way he's going to be shocked by a Japanese restaurant's portion size. There's some cool comic panels. There's some panels from Superman number 5 by Joshua Williamson and Jamal Campbell with the artwork. There is a out of context comic panel that looks really cool. That is, which is a fun one with Peter and Miles Morales. I'm not going to try to poorly represent those, but so that's going to be a thing. So CBR has an article up about the MCU needing a comics-accurate Star-Lord. This is an interesting thing to talk about right now because there's rumors of an eventual Star-Lord movie. And I would love to see more of a focus on Star-Lord. Did you think so? I don't know what your experience is with Star-Lord in comics, because I've read Star-Lord in comics. I've never felt that the Star-Lord in the movies needed to be comic accurate. That's me, though. So anybody listening to this can be like screaming at their, device right now, and respectfully, if you're that Star-Lord fan that's like, no, he needed to be comic book accurate, more power to you. And I get it. I feel that way about many characters. Star-Lord, for some reason, I don't. I really liked his portrayal, and I liked that character. But I don't know. What's your experience with Star-Lord, and what is your thought about film in general with the characters being comic accurate? Like, how is that important to you across the board? Is it different for different characters? What's your take typically?
Okay, I'm going to answer that one first, because for me and the movie universe, TV universe, comic book universe are all separate universes. Mm-hmm. So, for me to say, oh, it's got to be comic accurate. No, it doesn't. This is an Elseworld. This is an alternate Earth. This isn't Earth 1, this is Earth 27, or whatever Earth number you want to give it to. So there can be variations and differences. Now, there's certain stuff that I think we need to have. Like there's certain characterizations that the characters need to have. Superman needs to be Superman. And by that statement, I mean he's got to be the Kansas farm boy. He's got to be that person who's like, I'm not going to kill. I'm going to use my powers for right, not might. Now, if you're telling a story where we have, evil Superman, you're telling the story where he wasn't, then he's not Clark Kent anymore.
Yeah.
And then you shift it around. And then I'm okay with them shifting, the characterizations of Kal-El because he wasn't raised by the Kents. He wasn't raised that way. So then I'm cool with it. But there's certain things like Batman. Main thing about Batman is he doesn't have powers. He's, disciplined himself to the point where he can do superhuman things just because he's that prepared. And his parents died as a child right in front of him, and it traumatized him. Mm-hmm. Those are some of the foundations of who the Bat is. If they were to do a movie where Batman's happy-go-lucky, I would probably be thrown off a little bit by that. Then I would probably have an issue with that because that ain't right, But if the little tweaks, little changes that they do for movies, that kind of stuff doesn't bother me as long as they keep to the core of who that person is. And there's some takes, like for example, Jason Momoa as Aquaman.
Yeah,
absolutely love him as Aquaman. 100% thought that was wonderful. Thought his father, the way they told the story of him and his mother, all that stuff. I 100% was like, this is an outstanding Aquaman story. I have no problem that they're deviating from, the comic book universe.
Yeah, that's far from comic accurate. Right,
far from it, and I loved it.
Yep,
absolutely no issues whatsoever with it.
Great example, and I'm kind of where you're at. It seems to be some characters I'm really okay with it, other characters I'm not. And I think it has to do with quality of story, quality of reasoning behind it. There's no rhyme or reason because I tend to be the one that leans in the camp of I prefer it to be, I don't know, comic accurate is, I don't know exactly what I look for, but comic book close is probably more of what I'm looking for, where it's like you get the right beats in there. Jason Momoa is a great example of where, boy, that just worked. And he's kind of an oncoming storm that just works. I really enjoy him in general in work that he does. So there was a master. Go ahead. No, please. I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, well, I'll be quick on this one because I've got no back history on Star-Lord at all. Mm-hmm. My introduction to Star-Lord was the movies, really.
Yeah.
So I like the Star-Lord. I think he's awesome. So that's that.
But that's important though because I think people who are more of like I've read Star-Lord beforehand. No, I say I've read him. I am by no means a Star-Lord expert. I've read and enjoyed the character quite a bit in the course of my time as a comic book reader, but it's more in guest appearances and things like that versus reading runs with Star-Lord. So that's where I'm kind of like I can see why maybe I'm a little bit more willing to bend on that character. But then that gets thrown out the window with Aquaman. I've read a lot of Aquaman, and I was really okay with Jason Momoa playing Aquaman. Yeah. Masters of the Universe live-action movie is officially dead at Netflix. And this one looks like it's one totally driven by the cost of it. It was going to basically cost $200 million to make it. And they were trying to kind of spread that out a little bit by making a back-to-back sequel, which is, I think, a good strategy. I think it's a shame. They're still shopping it around to try and get this made. I hope it comes to light, just because I would love. I'd like to see a well done Masters of the Universe live action film.
Yes, I completely agree, and yeah, I'm just going to echo everything you're saying. Yes, I'd love to see this, and I don't know if we will though.
I agree.
Honest with you. If with that type of price tag,
yep,
I don't see that happening.
And then when you start cutting the budget off of that, that's where now all of a sudden you're going to wind up with a movie that's not going to be what we would want it to be in order for us to go, yes, I want to see this. JL8, I'm so glad that this was posted by Jock because it was from Monday Mini, and it just reminded me about how great JL8 is. I read this casually, and I need to get back to reading it regularly because of the fact that this is an incredible series. So JL8, I'm actually going to put a link to it in the show notes, the JL8 Facebook page, just because I just think it's really cool, and it's something that we should support. I'm a big fan of this. Have you checked it out at all, or do you remember us checking it out?
I've checked it out a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, and it's good. It's really, really good. So definitely check out JL8. And then this goes back to kind of our conversation from earlier, and it's where I'm so torn on this. I'm totally, in support of actors and writers getting what they deserve. This is where I don't understand how streaming residuals work. So Mandy Moore revealed that she was paid like 81 cents checks for This Is Us streaming residuals. Where I'm confused, and this isn't disputing her or anybody who's asking for proper compensation for streaming residuals. What I don't understand is, so you pay a streaming fee of $9.99, and that adds up certainly with the amount of subscribers that you have. But there's also a lot of programming on there. How does that work? Because, that's generating each month millions of dollars, right? But there's also an intense amount of content. The math, to me, is what I'm trying to figure out. How do you figure out, and is it the amount of times people watch it, or what generates the concept of what your residuals should be for it being on a streaming service? And it sounds to me like what they really need to have a conversation around is, what is fair? What is really being made here? And what's the appropriate thing for this delivery method? Understanding that once it goes to this delivery method, this is what it's going to make. Because if I hope I'm making sense of what I'm saying here, the amount that we pay each month for these streaming services, even though there's millions of subscribers, with the amount of content that it's on there, and you break down everyone who's in those programs. It's what I've said about like streaming comics and all that. We pay a monthly fee for that on the digital services, right? What does that turn into for creators? Like, do they make money off of that? And I'm afraid that it's more like this example from Mandy Moore for comic creators in that sense. Just because how can they? And I'm not anti these services. It's more of I see why we pay a premium to get the books sooner, because it now provides an additional revenue stream for that service for the newer books, where maybe they can compensate people somewhat for it. If that on the DC end, I'm wondering how much these services and streaming services and digital services are leading to money back to creative. What is the formula so that the company proper can make money and the talent that has created it, both acting and writing and, in the case of comics, artists, and can be compensated in a way where they can make a living doing it if their book winds up on one of these services? It's an interesting sort of conundrum. I'm admitting my own ignorance here on this piece. I am becoming more and more fascinated, though, on what that looks like, because I am a fan of people making money. So if they're making money, if they're making a profit, that talent sticks around. They want to make more. They're going to devote, their life towards it and continue to grow, and we're going to continue to get, better. In the case of comics, better comics. In the case of actors and writers, we're going to get more choice. All of that winds up being a winner. I don't understand the model. I don't understand how streaming works with what, even with the amount of subscribers that they have, what we pay each month. It generates a lot of money, sure, but then when you start, like any pie, the more you cut it up, the smaller the pieces get. So that's where I'm confused as to how streaming turns into a profit for anybody.
Yeah, and what I've looked into some of this stuff, again, with the trickiness of residuals, has always been something that has plagued in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And you think back to the cast of Gilligan's Island.
Right.
All those years that it's been playing over and over again, they never got a penny for any of that.
Which is
never in their contract.
And that's atrocious, right?
Right. And then they started changing the laws, because of stuff like that. And as every time they have a new medium that comes out, a new way for this stuff to go out, they have to update and modify the contracts. Because, first it was just TV, movies, then video rentals, then video owning, became a thing, then DVD streaming and this, and now streaming services and everything. And every time there's a new way for the product to get out, if it wasn't covered already in the contract,
right,
the actor is losing out on it because the business, the company, the studio will get paid somehow.
Right.
But how much they have to disperse out to the individuals, that's the question. And that's one of the big things that the strikes are over right now. One of the big things is because of this what's currently happening, and then the future.
Right.
What's coming out next with streaming services? What's coming out? Maybe we're going to get a home virtual reality thing where you're actually sitting in the movie itself instead of watching it, and you're completely immersed in it. Maybe that's going to be something that comes down the future. And how will those movies get done? Because it doesn't mention VR chamber, as a way to get the residuals on or something like, and stuff like that. And that's where this big issue's going on. So as things change, you kind of get, it does hurt. And, these little, you constantly hear stories about these actors getting these little tiny piddly checks like this.
Right. And I don't know what the answer is. It's I get the argument. I get why they're upset. I get why there's a debate. I just hope that there is a easy solution. Or, a solution that can be one that, people will be amenable to. Because this kind of stuff isn't good for anybody. And particularly people that get hurt on this piece are, like I said, your theaters, places like that.
Well, then you also add to it the people on set.
Yeah.
And the caterers, the people who have those restaurants that are right across the street from the studios.
Yeah.
If there's nothing going on in the studios, they're getting hurt. Transport people. There's a lot of different people who are getting affected by this beyond just the writers, the actors, and the studio. So and again, it kind of goes along with the comic industry.
Sure.
How going from paper to digital isn't just it's affecting the printers, it's affecting the comic shops, it's affecting, shipping people, it's affecting all types of different, industries based on that one simple factor. It's not just one part gets hit.
Yeah, and I wish I had an easy answer on this one. It's, I kind of sometimes, I know I talk in circles about this. And I'm passionate about the topic because, I want people to make money. I want this stuff to continue. I love progress. I'm a big fan of, I enjoy new platforms, new ways of enjoying things. But, ultimately, I'm also a realist. If people can't make money doing this, you're going to have less people that start making that their profession. You start getting less content, you get less choice. And that ultimately comes back to bite all of us. Yeah, it is an interesting time, my friend, and I'm thank you for everybody for posting everything on the Facebook group. Interesting topics as always. It's fun to talk around kind of things that are going on, not only in comics but in the worlds of media, because these are things that, even though they're not all directly DC related, they are things that have an impact on DC. The DC Universe, which is coming on the scene, Warner Brothers Media, streaming services, all that, they affect and impact all of the entertainment that we enjoy as fans of stuff that DC's producing. So interesting topics. Thanks, everyone, again.
He is called Hawkman. His gauntlets possess awesome powers.
I would like to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or drnorge on Skype. RagingBullets@gmail.com is our email address. We love having you part of our show, so please feel free to contact us. RagingBullets.com is our show website. The show website leads into Twitter. It leads into our Facebook fan page. We are proud to be part of an amazing Facebook group community that sends us a lot of great articles and memes and links to topics that are of interest to comic book fans, DC Comics fans, and really friends of the show. So please, if you haven't had a chance to join the Facebook group, consider joining it, consider participating in the discussion that's going on over there. But I want to thank everyone that curates that stuff for Speeding Bullets because it helps us with those topics. We are sponsored, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Mr. Segno, what's going on over at DCBService.com?
We have Flash #1, 50% off, $249. Birds of Prey #1, 50% off, $199. And Blue Beetle #1, 40% off, $239. Thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com, Batman Arkham Catwoman trade paperback. This is a $19.99 regularly book. It's 50% off, only $9.99. I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Our next episode, Jim and I are going to be back, and we're going to be talking about Night Terrors, Week 3. We will see you then.
Bye.
All right, you guys. Are you ready to sing your song?
I'd say we are. Yeah, let's sing it now.
Okay, this should be fun. Now get ready for your cue. Okay, Sean?
Okay.
Okay, Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Raging Bullets time is here. We talk about what we hold dear. Comic books and TV shows. Superheroes and their clothes. Justice League and so much more. I just love Green Lantern Corps. We talk about the books we've read with spoilers straight ahead.
Okay, fellas, get ready. That was very good, Sean.
Naturally.
Jim, you're a little flat there, so be careful. Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Justice League and so much more. I still love Green Lantern Corps. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show.
Excellent job, guys.
Let's sing it again. Yeah, let's sing it again.
No, that's enough. Let's not push it.
Push it. What is that? Yeah, what are you talking about?
No, I didn't mean anything by that.
I think
Sean,
we did it right
Jim,
now. I don't know.
how long do you want the song to go?
Look, it's our production.